"Get out of the way, old man. Some of us have actual places to be." The words, sharp as shattered glass, sliced through the humid afternoon air outside the fresh foods grocery. Elias Vance, his hands gnarled around the worn push rims of his wheelchair, flinched. He was just trying to navigate the cracked sidewalk, his progress agonizingly slow. The voice belonged to Officer Miller, young, crisp in his uniform, his face a mask of impatience. Elias felt a familiar weariness settle over him, a cloak he'd worn for too many years. He looked up, his faded blue eyes pleading for a moment's understanding. That was his mistake. Miller's hand went to his belt. A bright yellow taser appeared. "I said move!" A searing electric agony ripped through Elias's frail body. He convulsed, a choked gasp escaping his lips before darkness threatened to claim him. The groceries he'd painstakingly saved for, a small bag of essentials, tumbled to the ground. Did this hero, this forgotten warrior, deserve such blatant disrespect? If you believe in honoring those who served, type, "Respect our veterans." In the comments below. Elias Vance was a ghost in his own life, a relic of a bygone era. 82 years had etched their passage onto his face, carving deep lines around his eyes and mouth. His frame, once robust and strong from years carrying a rifle and the weight of command in jungles far from home, was now shrunken, confined to the battered wheelchair he'd acquired from a charity drive. He lived in a small, barely furnished room in a rundown part of the city, surviving on a meager pension that never quite stretched to the end of the month. His neighbors rarely saw him, and when they did, they saw only a stooped old man, his clothes clean but threadbare, his gaze often distant, lost in memories no one around him could comprehend. He never spoke of his past, of the medals tucked away in a battered cigar box, of the faces of men he'd led, men he'd saved, men he'd lost. Today, like many days, was a struggle. The pharmacy inside Fresh Foods held the medication that kept the worst of his combat-related pains at bay. Getting there was an ordeal, each push of the wheels an effort, each curb a mountain. He was a man of quiet dignity, asking for nothing, expecting even less, accustomed to being overlooked, to being invisible. This sidewalk, this moment, was just another small indignity in a life that had become a litany of them. Officer Miller, badge number 312, was having a bad day. A fender bender had snarled traffic, his coffee was cold, and his supervisor had just reamed him out over a late report. He saw Elias not as a person, but as another obstruction, another irritation in a day full of them. "Sir, you're blocking the pedestrian thoroughfare," Miller said, his voice devoid of warmth, laced with official doom. Elias, still recovering his breath from the initial shock of being yelled at, tried to angle his chair toward the store entrance, his movements jerky and slow. I'm just trying to get in, officer, for my prescription." His voice was raspy, thin. "Well, try harder. And faster," Miller snapped. "This isn't a nursing home parade route. People are trying to get by." He tapped his foot impatiently, his posture exuding annoyance. A few shoppers paused, their expressions ranging from mild curiosity to discomfort. But no one intervened. Elias felt a flush creep up his neck. He hated drawing attention, hated being a burden. He fumbled with the wheels again, one of them catching in a wide crack in the pavement. The chair lurched, almost tipping. "Can't you even steer that thing?" Miller sneered, stepping closer, looming over the seated veteran. "Maybe if you weren't out here begging, you could afford a better one." The accusation stung Elias more than the officer's impatience. Begging? He hadn't begged for anything in his life. He'd earned, he'd served, he'd sacrificed. "I'm not begging, officer," Elias said, his voice quiet, but with a tremor of an old, almost forgotten firmness. "I am a citizen. I have a right to be here." He tried to reach into his worn jacket pocket, perhaps to retrieve his VA card, some proof of his legitimacy, but his trembling fingers struggled with the button. Miller misinterpreted the movement. "Reaching for something? Are we resisting?" His eyes narrowed. The situation was escalating with terrifying speed, fueled by Miller's short temper and Elias's perceived frailty. The tension was a palpable thing, coiling in the air like a venomous snake. Elias finally managed to get his hand into his pocket, his fingers closing around a small, smooth object. It wasn't his VA card. It was an old Zippo lighter engraved with a unit insignia, a relic he always carried, a touchstone to past where he was someone. He pulled it out, not as a threat, but almost as a reflex, something to hold on to. Miller saw the glint of metal. "What's that, a weapon?" he barked, his hand instinctively going to his taser again. Drop it now!" Elias looked down at the lighter in his hand, confused. It's just a lighter, officer." But his explanation was lost. Miller, convinced he was dealing with a non-compliant, possibly dangerous vagrant, made his decision, the crackle of the taser, the blinding pain, the groceries scattering, milk, bread, a small tin of peaches, a pathetic tableau of a life disregarded Elias, slumped, his head lolling. The Zippo clattered onto the concrete. A young woman who had been watching with growing horror from the doorway of the bakery next to Fresh Foods gasped. She'd seen the whole exchange, seen the officer's unwarranted aggression, seen the old man's harmlessness. Tears streamed down her face as she fumbled for her phone, her fingers shaking so badly she almost dropped it. "Juan Tuamjuan, what's your emergency?" An officer just tased an old man in a wheelchair, she sobbed into the phone. "Outside Fresh Foods? On Elm Street? He wasn't doing anything. He's a veteran, I think. He looks... Oh, God, please send help." The dispatcher, professional but alert to the keywords officer involved and veteran, began a rapid series of questions. Simultaneously, the store manager of Fresh Foods, alerted by the commotion, rushed out. Seeing Elias on the ground, the taser wires still attached, and Officer Miller standing over him defensively, he too made a call. This one to the police precinct, demanding to speak to the watch commander, his voice trembling with outrage. Unbeknownst to Miller, who was busy radioing, in non-compliant subject, taser deployed, situation under control. A different kind of alert was being triggered. The veteran abused flag on the 911 call, combined with the severity of the incident, had triggered an automatic notification to a liaison officer embedded with local law. Enforcement for Veteran Affairs. This liaison happened to be attending a citywide emergency preparedness drill with several National Guard units, including one commanded by a certain General Hammond, who was in town for precisely this drill and a subsequent Veterans Outreach event. The message was relayed with startling speed. Elderly veteran assaulted. Possible police misconduct. Elm Street. 6 minutes. That's all it took for the gears of a different kind of authority to begin turning. The first sign was a distant, guttural rumble, growing louder, more insistent. Not the typical siren of an ambulance or police cruiser. This was deeper, more menacing. The sound of heavy engines. Officer Miller, attempting to justify his actions to a now gathering crowd of concerned and angry onlookers, looked up, annoyed by the new interruption. Then he saw them, olive-drab vehicles emblazoned with the stark white star of the U.S. military, were turning onto Elm Street. Not one or two, a convoy, Humvees, troop carriers. They fanned out expertly and swiftly, blocking off both ends of the street. Soldiers in combat fatigues disembarked with disciplined precision, their expressions unreadable but serious. The crowd fell silent, a wave of astonishment rippling through them. Miller froze, his jaw slack. What in God's name was happening? From the lead Humvee, a figure emerged, tall, imposing, his uniform adorned with the stars of a general. He moved with an air of absolute command, his gaze sweeping the scene. The grocery store, the small knot of people, Officer Miller, and finally the crumpled figure of Elias Vance in his wheelchair, paramedics just beginning to cautiously approach him. The general's boots crunched on the pavement as he strode forward. His name was Marcus Hammond, and his face, initially a mask of stern inquiry, shifted through a spectrum of emotions as he neared Elias. Professional concern, then a flicker of disbelief, then dawning, horrified recognition. General Hammond moved past Officer Miller as if he were invisible, his eyes fixed on the man in the wheelchair. He knelt, a gesture of profound respect that sent a shockwave through the onlookers and made Miller's blood run cold. "Mr. Vance?" The general's voice was low, but it carried, imbued with an emotion that was almost reverent. "Elias Vance, is that truly you, sir?" Elias, groggy and disoriented from the taser, slowly lifted his head. His eyes, clouded with pain, struggled to focus. He saw the uniform, the stars, the earnest face looking into his, a flicker of confusion, then a ghost of memory. "Hammond," he whispered, the name a forgotten echo. General Hammond's eyes welled. "Yes, sir, Marcus Hammond. My father, Colonel Iron Mike Hammond. You served with him. You saved his life in the Edring Valley." He gently picked up the Zippo lighter from the pavement, his fingers tracing the worn insignia. "He told me about this lighter. He said the man who carried it was the bravest soldier he ever knew, a man who led from the front, who never left a comrade behind, who was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross for valor that day." The general's voice thickened. "My father spoke of you until the day he died, sir. Called you a legend, a hero." He looked at Elias, his expression a mixture of awe and profound sorrow at the state he found him in. The crowd gasped. Officer Miller looked like he'd been punched in the gut, his face ashen. The police chief, who had just arrived, sirens wailing, skidded to a halt, his eyes wide with disbelief at the scene unfolding. A two-star general kneeling before a man his officer had just electrocuted. General Hammond rose, his imposing frame radiating cold fury as he turned to face Officer Miller. "Do you have any idea who this man is, officer?" Hammond's voice was quiet, dangerously so, yet it cut through the street noise like a razor. "This man, Elias Vance, is not just a citizen. He is a decorated hero of this nation. He has bled for the freedoms you swore an oath to protect. He has endured horrors you can only imagine in your worst nightmares, so that people like you could live in peace and safety." He held up the lighter. "That insignia? That's from the 1st Cavalry Division, a unit renowned for its courage. He didn't just serve, he led, he sacrificed. And you tased him over a grocery run?" Miller stammered. He was non-compliant, sir. I thought he was reaching for a weapon." "A weapon?" Hammond's voice dripped with contempt. "This man's hands have saved more lives than you've had hot dinners, officer. His only weapon today was his dignity, something you clearly failed to recognize, let alone respect." The police chief, a portly man named Henderson, hurried forward, his face crimson. "General Hammond, I am appalled. Officer Miller, you are suspended, effective immediately. Hand over your badge and weapon." Miller, utterly defeated, his arrogance shattered, fumbled with his belt, his hands shaking. Paramedics, now working with extreme gentleness and deference, carefully lifted Elias onto a stretcher. As they did, several of the National Guard soldiers standing stoically nearby unconsciously straightened, their eyes fixed on Elias. A silent, powerful tribute. One young sergeant, tears in his eyes, brought his hand up in a slow, deliberate salute. Elias was gently loaded into the ambulance, General Hammond personally ensuring his comfort, promising to meet him at the hospital. The murmuring crowd watched in stunned silence as the ambulance, now with an impromptu military escort, pulled. Away, Police Chief Henderson was profusely apologetic. "General, I assure you there will be a thorough investigation. This is unacceptable. We will make this right." Hammond nodded curtly. "See that you do, Chief. This city, this country, owes men like Elias Vance a debt that can never truly be repaid. But the least we can do is offer them our utmost respect and ensure their sacrifices are never forgotten, or worse, met with contempt by those in uniform." The National Guard contingent remained on site until local police had fully secured the scene and begun their internal affairs investigation. Officer Miller was taken into custody by his own department, a far cry from the arrogant enforcer he had been mere minutes before. The story of the tased veteran and the general's intervention spread like wildfire through the city, then regionally, then nationally. It became a flashpoint for discussions about the treatment of veterans, police conduct, and the simple, often overlooked dignity of the elderly and vulnerable. In the days that followed, Elias Vance was treated like the hero he was. At the hospital, doctors and nurses attended to him with unwavering care and respect. General Hammond was a frequent visitor, often just sitting and talking with Elias, listening to stories the old soldier hadn't shared in decades. The VA galvanized by the public outcry and direct intervention from Hammond's office, expedited a full review of Elias's benefits. He was moved from his squalid room to a comfortable apartment in a veterans-assisted living facility. A state-of-the-art motorized wheelchair appeared, a gift from a local veterans charity inspired by his story. Officer Miller faced a disciplinary board and was subsequently dismissed from the force, his career in law enforcement over. Chief Henderson implemented mandatory new training programs for his department, focusing on de-escalation techniques, recognizing PTSD, and fostering better community relations, especially with vulnerable populations and veterans. The City Council even passed a resolution honoring Elias Vance, and a small plaque was eventually placed outside Fresh Foods, not to commemorate the incident, but to remind passers-by of the quiet, often hidden valor that walks among them. Elias, now in his new home, often sat by his window looking out at the small garden. The engraved Zippo lighter sat on his bedside table next to a framed photograph of a much younger Elias arm in arm with a smiling young officer, Marcus Hammond's father. He was no longer invisible. Neighbors greeted him warmly. Young volunteers from a local school came to read to him or just listen. The change wasn't just in his circumstances, but in the air around him. He was seen. He was valued. His story, a somber tale of disrespect turned to vindication, served as a potent reminder. Never judge a book by its worn cover. The quiet old man in the tattered coat, the woman struggling with her bags, the silent figure in the wheelchair. They all carry stories. They all possess an inherent worth. The respect Elias Vance was finally shown was not just for his past heroism, but for his present humanity. His ordeal had, in a strange way, brought him back into the light, reminding a forgetful world that honor and dignity are not conferred by status or appearance, but are intrinsic to the human spirit, especially to those who have given so much. The dignity of Elias Vance was eventually restored, a testament to the fact that true honor can never be fully extinguished. The consequences for Officer Miller were swift and just, a clear message that abuse of power will not be tolerated. More importantly, systemic changes began to ripple through the local police department, with new training initiatives designed to prevent such injustices from ever happening again. This story is a powerful reminder that heroes walk among us often. Unseen, their sacrifices hidden beneath the cloak of age or humble circumstances. It teaches us the profound importance of looking beyond appearances, of treating every individual with the respect they deserve, for we never truly know the battles they have fought or the burdens they carry. Let us all strive to see the hidden worth in others, to honor the silent strength, and to remember that a little compassion can illuminate the darkest corners of indifference. The enduring image is of Elias, no longer isolated, but surrounded by a community that finally sees him. His quiet smile, a beacon of resilience. His presence, a constant reminder that respect is a currency that costs nothing, but is worth everything. If you believe that every person deserves dignity and that our veterans especially have earned our unwavering respect, subscribe to Hidden. sparks for more stories that matter. Share this video if it touched your heart, and never forget the silent heroes among us.